Welcome to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts. And now your host, Mike D. and JD.
Welcome to Beyond the Label. I'm Mike D.
And I'm JD.
So we aren't quite sure what the topic of the show is going to be today, so we're going to figure it out as we go.
Whatever you ask me, I'll answer. That's what it is.
I think I know the perfect topic for today's show then. It's a hot button item right now. I'm a frequent traveler, as many of our listeners probably don't know. I'm usually on the road 5, 6, 7, 10 weeks. I don't know. I'm always on the road. And part of the challenge that I'm having is I see a lot of these people with, they have service dogs, okay? And I don't have a problem with service dogs.
I know where you're going with this.
I don't think this many people need service dogs.
Oh, I thought you were going with this service chicken.
Oh, well, okay. That was going to be the second half. Or the service peacock. What I'm talking about is I go into a restaurant. I go into my fitness center. I go into another building or a place of work where pets aren't normally allowed. Okay. And now I'm starting to see these vests that you can buy online for your dog that say service dog on them. But how many of these people actually have prescribed service animals or have service animals? Is this something that you've ventured into? And
it's really not a topic that I know too much about. I do have a fellow martial artist. She has a service dog, and it is very handy for her. She's in a wheelchair, and so the dog does numerous things, to reach for her, to grab doors and things like that.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the purpose of a service animal and how a service animal is supposed to help for both physical disabilities and emotional disabilities. And let's figure out, because I've even been parts of conversations where somebody wanted to bring their dog to a hotel and they're like, oh, I'll just buy one of those vests online. And I'm screaming, no, you can't do that. Because think about it. Do you think it would diminish? It must diminish the value or the capability for people to do that, right?
Well, I think not only does it diminish it, but that just makes my blood boil, sitting here even thinking that somebody would do that. Because I'll tell you what, if you were in the situation where you needed that, there's no way that you would ever pretend you need it if you don't.
So let's look at it from this standpoint, right? I don't think I'd ever pretend I needed crutches. I would never pick up your crutches and start walking around with them so I could get into a restaurant with your crutches.
No, but that's been done before.
Really?
This guy has done this numerous times to get into sporting events and different things to get premium seating, and he's actually has no problem
really
with it.
So this is so we're formulating the topic of the show today. Let's talk about the advantages to help aid in accessibility. Let's start with that. And then we'll work our way back to people abusing the system and then figure out how we can try to solve some of these problems, right?
Sure.
Okay. So let's talk about some of the basics. Handicap parking spaces. So I'll give you an example from my personal life, and then you talk to me about yours, right? Because sure. I know you have, with that particular issue, something that you've gone through, and then we can talk about that. Recently, I was in Boston, and I don't know if you know anything about Boston.
The best team in baseball plays there.
One of the best hockey teams, if you're talking to me, but
not much of a hockey fan, but
well, that's your loss. So there's nowhere to park in that city. Check this out. We're there for this christening, and my uncle, who is disabled, he's an elderly gentleman at this point, has a hard time getting around. He has tinnitus in his ears, but really it's mobility for him. My dad took the handicap placard, the window placard or whatever, hung it in his car, and was able to park close to the church and then close to the restaurant where we were going because of that. So an appropriate use of the system, because he was driving my uncle around, right? But there have been plenty of times where we've seen that abused. Talk to me about how difficult the process it was parking where you used to work.
Okay, so let me back up just a little bit. So handicap placard says that you can park in a designated space as long as you have an individual with a disability in the vehicle. They don't necessarily have to be driving, and the space does not necessarily have to have the symbol for handicap parking. So if there's a metered space available, you can swing into that metered space as long as the handicap space is full.
Okay, and if you have the handicap placard and you park in the metered space, do you have to pay for that parking?
No.
And that is where? Is that in this city? Is that federally? Is that every?
That's Vermont state law.
Okay, so it's pretty universal throughout the state.
Right.
Other states may have some variant of that, but the concept is if you have a placard, whether there's a handicap space or not, you can choose the spot closest to the door you need to go in, and you should get some sort of recognition for that, whether it's free parking or whatever it is, right?
Yes, that's correct, providing the handicap spot is full.
Okay, so but the handicap spot's not full, that's your spot. That's
Right.
your go-to.
Right.
All right, so now, I remember there was a challenging period with parking at work.
Yeah, the whole situation actually was pretty challenging because A, spaces downtown are limited, and then B, handicap spaces downtown are few and far between, and C, once I got inside the building was considered grandfathered, so although it passed what is called acceptable accessibility measures, it was not truly. It was not truly.
You've never seen more stairs in one building than in this building.
But
right?
it was handicap accessible
because there was an elevator.
because there was an elevator.
But you didn't work on a floor that the elevator got to.
Right.
So this is a balcony. You got to imagine an old theater, and this is a balcony. But the balcony was really on the third and a half floor. So it was between the third and fourth floors, and the elevator didn't go to the third and a half floor, and there was no point of access. So if you were in a wheelchair, it would have been even more difficult, correct? Somebody would have to carry you up the stairs.
Right.
In a situation where accessibility is available, like a parking spot, there are challenges of people using that parking spot inappropriately. In situations where accessibility should be available, sometimes we don't have that because of the laws surrounding it. So regardless of all these great things that are put in place, like free parking because your handicap spot is taken, or a grandfathered rule so the business doesn't have to overly invest in accessibility, at the same time can be a detriment to the people working there as well.
I guess probably the best way to explain this is give you what my day-to-day routine was. So my day-to-day routine would be to drive into work with my wife. We both were fortunate enough to work at the same place.
Well, be honest, you got her the job there with your charming abilities, right? I mean,
That's it.
that's
I am a pretty charming fellow, by the way.
just please, she really just needs a job. And then the next thing you know, they hired her. No,
Right. That's kind of how it
Katie's
went down.
very talented. We won't.
Anyway, she would drive. Oftentimes the handicap space would be taken. So that would mean that we would need to drive around the building. There was another handicap space out in the back, which was a back entrance. But if you went in the back entrance, it still meant that you needed to walk a fair amount to get to the elevator, which led to the stairs that you had to walk up. If those spaces were both taken, it was a matter of driving around and around and around the block until a space opened up.
And that's because, again, for most people like myself, it's like, oh, I'll just go find another space somewhere else. But for you, that's an additional long walk.
Right.
Well, you can find a space down the street, but that's a 20-minute walk at this point.
Right.
It's actually less time for you to drive around the block for 10 minutes waiting for a space to open up than it would be to park down the street and try to hoof it.
Right. And the thing is that so then say the space opens up, right? So then we get out of the car and, she has to get my crutches out, or if you're in a wheelchair, you've got to get the wheelchair out. To get a wheelchair out is like another probably 10 or 15 minutes just to get it out, get it set up and get yourself into it. So, you have to think of those things for somebody, but so we get on the crutches and she brings all the bags up. She looks like a pack mule because she's got my bag, her bag, and who knows what else.
What are you doing?
I've got all the great ideas of all the stuff that I should be bringing.
Got it. You're the idea guy. She's the laborer.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
But and again, your situation is slightly different than maybe somebody else's because you have somebody to help you.
Right.
Where someone else may have to do all of this on their own.
Right.
So
we get inside the building. We take the elevator up to the third floor. Up the stairs we go. Well, we were supposed to be at work at 8:00, and I'll be the first to tell you I'm a little lazy in the morning. I don't like to get up and get going around. So that's part of the problem. But most of the problem was the issue of the parking and getting there. So we'd show up about 20 after 8 every day. So
I can't believe how lazy you are.
Exactly. Why don't you move a little faster, boy?
Yeah, come on.
Anyway, that was my day, and I'm not trying to make light of my day because there's always somebody out there that has an even tougher day, and you have to remember that. So just be conscious when you say, "I'll just park here for a minute." It's only a second. In that second, somebody who really needs that spot may not be able to get it because you're just taking it up for just a second.
Sure. I was someplace yesterday where I pulled into a parking lot and had 2 arrows. It said visitor parking this direction, visitor parking that direction, right? There were 15 spots. And of the 15 spots, I'd say 13 of them were all labeled with handicap. So there were a total of 15 spots, 2 of which I could park in for visitor parking. And then the rest of them, you had to have a handicap plate. And in my perspective, that seems excessive, right? Seems like, why do you need these many spots? And by the way, not a single one of those spots was taken up, right?
No, and I can understand from your perspective. That's pretty frustrating. You're like, seriously, do we know this many handicapped people that are going to use these?
But the thing is at the same time, and in that moment, I'll be honest, in that moment, as much as I was like, man, we could use a few more like regular visitor spots here. I'm also able to park my car wherever the heck I need to and walk across the parking lot, right? Honestly.
And to be honest with you, probably the exercise.
I probably could use the walk across the parking lot for those of you who can't see my giant gut. Thank you for pointing that out, by the way.
Sure, you'll get me back in some episode somewhere, I'm sure.
But the concept there is sometimes people who have my luxury, or my ability is I just got to shut up and deal with it because, accessibility isn't to irritate those who don't need it. It's to provide for those who do.
But on the flip side of the coin, because there's nothing that drives me more crazy than the person that feels like they're entitled to everything because they have a disability.
That's a good point. Okay.
So there are certain things out there that, yes, they're there for you to make life easier. And yeah, it sucks that you've got a disability, but nobody can change that. It's nobody else's fault. Don't throw a pity party for yourself either, is what I'm trying to get at.
I guess so. I guess I see that. I guess I don't. I don't understand. Explain.
You're either going to love or hate this podcast after I make this statement, but that's what this podcast is about. I told you I'd lay it on the line.
Lay it on the line.
And tell you the truth about, living beyond the label. So there are people out there that take a glass is half empty approach to their disability, and that's okay. That's where they're at in life.
That's their prerogative. That's fine.
But at some point, you've got to realize that the world doesn't owe you everything because you have a disability. So the handicap space is taken. So, okay, come up with a plan B. I know it sucks that you have to, or you shouldn't have to, but here are the cards you're dealt, much like in life. So you've got to kind of try to figure that out. And
so wait. Let me see if I can get this straight. And I'm going to say this very clearly. What you are saying is that having a disability is no excuse or no reason to just be upset about everything that doesn't go your way if it's related to that disability.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Wow. Okay, so I'm not going to touch this topic at all. You can touch it all you want because so let me give you a perspective from in my house. If my kids are sick or if I'm sick, that doesn't excuse us from doing the chores and responsibilities that we have. Like, I'm not talking like deathly ill, right? So I have a theory. It aligns very closely with yours, slightly different scenario. But the concept of, listen, just because life didn't hand you a piece of cake this morning when you got up doesn't mean that you get to like mope all day long about it and get upset that you didn't get to eat your cake this morning.
Right. I mean, make people known that, boy, I hope that person that's using that handicap spot really needs it because, boy, it sure didn't make my morning this morning. but don't carry on about it all day.
Got it. So take the punches that come from life, although it stinks. I'm trying to use appropriate language here. Although it stinks, move on to the next thing. Don't just harp and harp and harp.
Right, right. And don't, I don't know, just don't blow it out of proportion. Like, there's so many other things in life to get really charged up about. And I know it's a hassle, and I know it's a pain, and I know it seems like it happens more than it probably actually does. And when it happens, it really is tough. But, man, nobody wants to hear it because they've got problems of their own.
So what's the perspective for me then, right? So let's say, for example, I'm with you and we go somewhere to park, or we go somewhere to, like, we go see a movie or go dinner or something like that, and there's no capable spots available, right? Nothing that fits within the confines of getting you to the restaurant at any given time whatsoever. I mean, at that point, I'm going to feel bad, right?
So oftentimes I think it's a bigger deal for the person with me than it is for me myself, if that makes any sense.
So for the parent or the friend or the cousin or whatever.
Because they are, like, emotionally attached to it. And to me, it's just another day of life. Hey, listen, Mike, we got to take a break, but we'll be back in just a minute.
Beyond the Label, presented by Century Martial Arts, for everything that is martial arts. It's no secret, every martial artist, no matter their age, dreams of becoming a legend. A legend. Having their name listed among the greats like Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, and Jackie Chan. You can hide it or deny it, but you know it's true. Being a legend takes raw talent, dedication, big breaks, and an ability to survive a roller coaster called fame. But it also takes one more thing to go with it: the best gear and equipment in the world. From the company that is martial arts, Century Martial Arts. They aren't just another martial arts supplier that's never set foot on a mat. They are martial artists, and that means they know their products and use what they sell. From uniforms and training gear to weapons and equipment, Century has it all for every martial arts style. Although you may never be listed among the greats, you can still shop like one at CenturyMartialArts.com and unleash your legend within. Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. You're listening to Beyond the Label, a raw, real-life look at living with disabilities, presented by Century Martial Arts. Check them out at CenturyMartialArts.com. Now back to the show with Mike D and JD.
Hey, I'm JD.
I'm Mike D.
And welcome back to the podcast.
Okay, so to recap here, what we've been talking about is accessibility options that are provided for people who need them, and that's great, and they're there for a reason. But then those same options being taken away by people who don't necessarily need those options, like a parking spot being used. I know not to park in a handicap spot. I know, unless I'm picking you up or dropping you off or with you, that I should be nowhere near that spot.
Right.
That's a normal human responsible thing for me to do. But there are plenty of times we see that abused. Someone parked in the spot without a placard that we actually watch park in the spot, gets out of the vehicle and walks into the store on their own two damn legs. Right.
And so what's my reaction at that point?
Smash their window?
No, I roll down the window and, what are you doing? I
try to educate them.
I hope you actually need that.
Yeah.
More than I might.
Yeah.
And then they'll look at you and go, yeah, well, I wasn't really going to park here.
So let's take that to the next level. We started the conversation off, and this is a great example because it's a good correlation, right? We started the conversation off with the service animal piece because I'm very confused about it right now. My confusion is that is an accessibility option that over the past 5 or 7 years has been given to people for emotional and physical stability.
Right. And I think the thing is, physical disabilities may have an easier time gaining acceptance for those type things, whereas the folks with things like autism and ADHD and disabilities like that are going to be ridiculed more. And in my opinion, that's
a really good point.
Fair.
That's a really good point. Well, they may be ridiculed because people don't believe them, but they may also be ridiculed because people don't understand.
Right.
Right? The don't believe them is, well, you don't need a service animal. What do you need that for? Right?
Right.
But the don't understand is, why would somebody who has anxiety need a service dog, right? Or something, or any type of accessibility option, right?
Right.
And that to me is disappointing that that's the thought process. So here's a perfect example. You see, let me paint a visual picture sitting in the hotel lobby where there's a, when you sign into the hotel, it's like no dogs, no cats, right? Service animals only. And you see this 50-something, 60-something-year-old woman with her lap dog, her little poodle or her schnitzel or whatever dog, she has, that doesn't look like a service dog because service dogs are golden retrievers or something like that.
So service dogs have labels too, then?
Apparently.
Okay.
In my mind,
as long as we have that clear.
But the service dog has a vest on. The dog has a vest on it. Like the first thought was she just did that, and I'll admit this, and that's the first thought sometimes because of the situational awareness that we think we have. The first thought is, well, she did that. She bought that service dog vest so that she could bring her dog without having to where she wants, when she wants, without having to have a reason, right?
Right.
And that can be dangerous, right? Because we don't know what's going on. And it's the same situation that we don't understand what the person in front of us in the grocery line is going through that day. We don't understand what the person that's driving in front of us going 2 miles an hour is going through. We don't understand everybody's situation all the time. So judging someone based on the situational awareness, they're driving slow, they're not moving fast enough, whatever, right? That applies in these spaces as well, because little do we know whether or not that service dog is there for a reason with that person. So I've tried to take the approach that unless I know what's going on, that I have no right to judge.
And I think that's the best approach to take, but is it a realistic approach?
Well, and see, that's what's starting to happen now. And this is where I think, and this is kind of where the topic kind of rears its ugly head, is what's happened is there have been people abusing this system, right? Like the buddy I told you about earlier that says, oh, I'll just buy the vest online so that I can bring my dog. I know he does not have a service dog. I know that dog is not a service dog. And I confronted him about it. I'm like, dude, that's not cool, because here's what happens.
What was his reaction to you? And
his
your
initial reaction was, they will never know. How would they ever know? Right? Like, how would they ever know it's not a service dog?
So what did he do when because I know you well enough to know. So what did he do when you really went,
I said to him, I said, listen, he said, it's your choice. I said, I'm not your master. I said, but just be aware that you are abusing a system designed for someone who needs it. I said, and a lot of it is designed for the people that you honor on a regular basis, because he's a very big fan of what people do in the military. And what we're finding is a lot of returning vets are getting service animals. And I'm saying, you're abusing the system for them. I tied it home. I locked it into his, and he's like, all right, you know what? He said, if it upsets you that much, I won't do it. I said, it's not about it upsetting me. I said, you could ignore what I have to say. It's about, that's not the right thing to do. You're actually going to be part of the problem, not part of the solution. So he backed down. He said, all right, fine, I'll pay the extra $25 a night. But hopefully there was some awareness there.
Right. And I think what needs to happen is, as a society, we got to start calling people out and just say, okay, what are you doing here?
And this goes way beyond the subjects we're talking about here now. You know what I mean? This goes to bullying. It goes to all sorts of things. I mean, but how do we do this in our space, right? Our subject, our topic is beyond the label. How do we get beyond this label? How do we make things better for the people in our lives that have to live in these situations? And how do we improve education, right? That's literally awareness is what this podcast is all about.
So my takeaway from a disabled standpoint is this, and I guess this is what I was trying to get at before. If you don't need the spot, don't take it. If you don't need the services, don't use them. There's no such thing as just a minute, or nobody's going to see, nobody's going to know, because the person that needs it at the time you're using it and you don't need it is going to know. If you're somebody with a disability, just understand that, we understand your situation. We know it's difficult. We know it's frustrating. But at the same time, just handle some situations with some class and don't play the disability card and throw a big tantrum.
And I guess from my perspective, I need to be as aware as possible, right? I need to be non-judgmental at the same time. And I need to make others aware when I have the opportunity is really what it comes down to, right? And whether that awareness is, hey, you know what, look, you probably shouldn't be using that stall, that spot, whatever. I don't need to be confrontational about it, but definitely make people aware that there are people waiting. There are people that need those things. There's a reason that laws have been put in place. There's a reason that signs have been put up. There's a reason that these different options have been made available to people. And if you need that option and you don't have it today, there's a process to go through that is quite simple that will allow you to get that option, whether that's a doctor's visit or a visit to your town hall or whatever that happens to be. So go through the process if that's an option you need. Or if it's not an option you truly need, then don't abuse it. It's not for you, and that's okay. And I think that that's the message that needs to be conveyed when we run into those situations.
Well, today's topic kind of morphed itself into accessibility issues, but that's okay. That's an important topic too. But at some point, we should circle back around and talk about service animals.
I think that'd be a great idea. So maybe one of our up and coming shows, we can align with someone who's an expert on service dogs or service cats or service peacocks and chickens and turkeys, and that'd be great. Well, that's for another show. I'm Mike D.
I'm JD. And until next time,
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Label. If you would like to be a guest on an upcoming episode, email contact@adaptivemartialarts.org. Beyond the Label is produced by JD Production and presented by Century Martial Arts, the world leader in martial arts since 1976. CenturyMartialArts.com for everything that is martial arts.